Hello, my name is Rusty Coons, and I have Alicia Elfving, MotoLady, with me right now. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm glad to have you here. You got a lot going on, man, and I really dig it. Like every time I ride with a woman, I just get a big smile on my face. I can't tell you why, but I do. It's just I dig the hell out of it. And anyhow, I remember back, I don't know, in the 70s or 80s, I think it was the 80s, a lot of women started getting more into Harleys. It was just a rush. It's like I love it. But anyhow, I want to get back before we get into your main story and all the stuff that you're doing right now. You've got the MotoLady stuff, you've got the women's moto show and all that. Let's go back into your childhood. When was the first time you were on two wheels?
The first time I was ever on two wheels at all, actually, I was technically an adult. I was 18 and it was on a date and I was on the back of a Harley. That was technically the first time I was ever on two wheels. Yeah.
So you're on the back. How about on the front?
Yep. A couple months after that, in the motorcycle safety class from Team Oregon, basic rider training, so I could get my endorsement.
Oh, right on. So you got the bug after riding on the back, and you said, I want to be on the front of this thing, huh?
I think the only reason I ever got on the back of the motorcycle was because I had always wanted to ride one, and that was the closest I could get at the time.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, because when I was a kid, I always wanted to ride, but my mom wasn't really keen on the idea. My dad's family, however, was, and I say this lovingly, were kind of rednecks, and there was lots of dirt biking and off-roading, and my cousin would go ripping donuts around me when I was a little girl, and I was always really jealous, so I always wanted to ride, but I just never got the opportunity.
Did you ever do any of the dirt bike riding?
Nope, never. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have now, since,
Yeah.
but as a kid, not even a little bit. Nope.
So the first thing when you were riding was at the safety course, correct?
Yep, that was the first time I was on a motorcycle, bars in my hands, and the throttle at
Yeah.
my fingertips. Yeah.
Those are good things, man. I think that's a great thing for people to start out with those. They really have some, good pointers in there. And you instead of just getting out on the street and learning the hard way, I mean, you get a lot of good knowledge out of that before you get on the street, you know?
100%.
So what was the next thing after that?
100%.
Right on. What was the next thing after that?
After I took the course and I got really stellar marks, like I don't say this to toot my horn, but I just was so thankful for that because at the time motorcycles, were so fresh to me. I had no experience and I didn't know if I was good at them. Like I felt really good on a motorcycle. I felt like it was a second part of me, but to have that validation from someone else was really awesome. So Team Oregon actually sent me a letter of recommendation to become an instructor after I took
Oh,
one weekend course. I know I was like, whoa, thank you so much, and
that's amazing. Yeah.
it was very cool. It wasn't until gosh, 5 years later almost, maybe 3.5, 4 years later, that I finally got a motorcycle. So it still took me some time after I got my endorsement to finally land myself one.
Did you actually do any instructing with them or just went down the road?
No, I think the pressure of doing that in the beginning of my motorcycling career was just not something I was very interested in. And now once I actually stop jumping around and traveling so much, then I think that's something I'll look into doing because it would be
Right
really
on.
rewarding for sure.
So a few years later, what was the first motorcycle you ended up buying?
It was a 1981 Yamaha Maxim XJ650 inline four cruiser. It was technically Yamaha's first cruiser, I think, that they ever built. It was a mess. It had like a hole in the engine case with JB Weld stuck on it. Um, the gosh, it died all the time. I mean, I call it motorcycle boot camp
Yeah.
because I had to figure out how to keep it going.
Was the JB Weld holding the oil in?
Yeah, for sure.
Right on.
For sure.
Uh, right on. And you kept that for a little while?
I had that for I think a year, until I honestly couldn't keep it running anymore. I mean, not a mechanic, especially inexperienced at that point
Yeah.
in my life. So everything I was doing was with the help of friends. And that's, part of how my motorcycle community grew so much, is that when I couldn't figure it out, I would just, ask people that I met places like, hey, you're good at wiring, right? Can you help me? And then I would learn as I went. After about a year, I couldn't keep it running. It would die inexplicably after, I don't know, an hour and a half riding when it got hot, and then it would start up again. All the power would die, on and on. And so I finally, I rehomed it with full honesty and transparency of how beat up it was. No idea what happened to it after that. Sometimes I still miss it. I'm not going to lie.
So what'd you step into after that?
After that, I had a series of borrowed motorcycles. For a while, I had a TDM 850. I think it was a 1993 Yamaha, which is very, very weird, like not dual sport, kind of touring motorcycle. I rode an XS 400 for a while from the late 70s. That was also very poorly tuned and slow. And then later, I finally got myself a new motorcycle, which was my Honda Rebel. But in the series of that, I had lots and lots of random short-term things, including a Honda Ascot 500, FT 500,
Yeah.
which was very, very cool. And I also, of course, built my Ducati, which took 3 years and became my daily for a year and a half or two, I think, before I got the Honda
Okay.
Rebel. Yeah.
What's funny is the Rebel, it's not that big on the CCs, but it performs. I've seen, I had a girl ride back from the Bay Area beside me on one of those. And I
Yeah.
was on a Harley, and I thought I was hauling ass, you know what I mean? But I look over at her, she's smiling, she just, you know what I mean? She could have done anything I could have done on that, you know? And the motor's like a third the size of what I was riding, basically.
So I went to the Honda Rebel like launch that they did back in, I think it was 2016, because bikes came out 2017. I could be wrong on dates, but anyhow, the 300 and the 500 were coming out at that time, and I got to speak with the engineers that came over from Japan. The way that they built it was very cool. They built it specifically for customizing, because everything can come apart and the frame is very simple and doesn't have a bunch of extra stuff on it. They made it so that it's got a big cylinder in there, a big piston. So it's got a lot of torque. And even though mine's a single cylinder, it'll still do 100 miles an hour. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like what more do you need just for, funsies? Like maybe not for every single purpose, but it does the job for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Honda, they've always been able to, wring every horsepower out of everything. I mean, those little tiny 50cc mini trails they used to have, they hauled ass. It's like crazy.
Yeah,
So
those
what,
monkey bikes are
so
a lot
what
of fun.
happened to get you into this women's moto show?
Well, having gotten my 1998 Ducati Monster 750 beat up and parked for a year and a half or something before I got it. It had been crashed on both sides and then like just left in a corner. So I had to fix it. And if I'm going to fix it, I'm going to make it what I want. And so I dreamed up my fantasy custom Ducati and drew it up and then started out on my expedition of customization. So after that, I really wanted to showcase other women that were building and doing in the motorcycle industry. So that's the short story of how Women's Moto Show was born.
So basically, the women's motor show, every contestant in there has built their bike, all the women.
I believe that I would say 90% have built their motorcycle, period, full
Wow,
stop. And
that's
then there are
cool.
some others that are in there from like race motorcycles. Melissa Paris, for instance, she had a big hand in working on it, but she also has a team that helps. Right.
Okay.
So there are certain other instances like that. There was another one that was a 1938 Indian Scout that was owned by Cecilia Adams, who was a dirt bike or sorry, off-road racer in Southern California in the 40s and 50s. And
Wow.
that bike was now owned by this lady, Christine Peach. So she brought that motorcycle. So for instance, she didn't build that one, but it's absolutely on brand with highlighting,
Sure.
women in motorsports.
So they're either riding them or they have a hand in it or they're
Yeah.
outright building it. That's great. That's
Yeah,
great. How's
exactly.
that doing with all that?
Oh, it's awesome. It's grown a lot over the last 8 years, and of course, as with everybody, we had a little snafu with events for a while. We still made it happen every year through the dark times of COVID, 2020 through this year, and it has been great. The response to it and watching all the other women motorcycle events
Mhm.
developing around the world as well is really rewarding to see because I'm hoping that we can all join forces and make just this massive like motorcycle mecca for women.
I love it. I love it. Now, where do you do these shows at?
Historically, the show is in Los Angeles. We did have a year
Mm,
in Texas
okay.
because again, COVID. But yes, it started in the Los Angeles Arts District, like downtown LA, and I'm
Okay.
hoping to keep it there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's a cool spot. A lot going on there too. That's down where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good vibes, it's lots of cool art and the people, can come in from all around Southern California and it's pretty central and everything else. So
And you're talking about art. You're also artistic. You do photographing and like photography on bikes and all, other things.
I'm definitely like a bit of a photographer. That's some of where me starting MotoLady came from was,
Yeah.
being a new motorcyclist and also someone who is very into photography.
Mhm.
I do a lot of photography with editorial and storytelling and those sort of things as well. So photography is a big part of my life for sure.
So, MotoLady, tell me about that. What do you got going on online with that?
MotoLady started 12 years ago, I think, at this point.
Mhm.
Gosh, I'm terrible with dates today. I'm sorry about that. But
No,
anyway, yeah,
you're right.
MotoLady's over a decade old, and it started because I got my motorcycle, and I was, as a photographer, like constantly looking for inspiration online. And at the time, I don't know if you remember this website. It's still around, but it started on Tumblr. So I had a personal
Yeah,
Tumblr, if you will.
they're still
And
around. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and the posts that I was doing with my motorcycle stuff were kind of like taking off in comparison to my other things. And it started feeling very weird for me that there was this like popular post next to, let's say, a weird poem that I wrote. Okay. And so at that point, I tapped into like my marketing and web and graphic design experience, and then really started, you know, thinking about how I can promote this or make its own thing. And then MotoLady was born. So I started a MotoLady Tumblr blog and I just kept at it and kept collecting and sharing content of women around the world that were on bikes. And I think the thing that set me apart at that point is that I was doing the research to find out who it was and who took the photo. And I was putting names to the faces and these popular images that were making the rounds on the internet. And so people kind of gravitated to be like, oh, now I know that woman's name is Laura, and now I know who took that photo and where they're from and everything. And it gives it a story.
Yeah. Talking about Laura Clock.
No, there were
Oh,
photos of her at that point, but there was this chopper rider whose full name I still have not found out. Maybe someone out there in this will know. She was known as Lil Laura, and she had, if I recall correctly, like a green and blue chopper, and she lived in Southern California. And I still to this day have never met her or figured out who it is, and it's still drives me a little bit crazy.
so you have people from all over the world, women.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
great, and it's growing every year, huh?
Well, it keeps growing, and I also actually was able to write an entire book about it based off of these articles and stories of women in motorcycling, historic and modern. And I had 110 to begin with that I wanted to feature, and it got pared down to 74 for the book. So it is a book called The Moto Ladies Book of Women Who Ride, and it features 74 individual profiles on historic and modern motorcycling women that have made waves in the motorcycling industry and beyond.
Is that like a coffee table book?
Yeah,
With,
kind of.
those are cool. I like those.
Yeah,
Yeah, the big pictures, collectible. So you went around and you did your research and got all the right people, right?
for sure. Yeah. There's everyone from the Van Buren sisters, who crossed the country early in the 1900s against all odds. I think they were like 4'9" or something crazy too. So even starting these motorcycles
What were
would have
they
been a
riding?
challenge. They
Were
were
they,
on a Harley.
yeah,
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
rigid frame Harleys, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably
yeah,
flatheads because they only had at that point 49. They just came out with the panheads in 48, I think. So, and they probably weren't on new bikes, right?
no. Back then, women would get arrested for wearing pants and riding a motorcycle. Like that's the things that they were against.
Yeah,
Bessie Stringfield in the 40s, she crossed the country and was also one of the first women and one of the first African American women to be in the service, and she was doing dispatch stuff, and there were places that she couldn't stay. So she had to literally sleep on top of her motorcycle in parking lots. Like
crazy.
incredible,
Yeah,
so that's what the book is about, is taking these stories, these historic stories of women in motorcycling, and then also next to it will be a story about a modern woman that couldn't be doing what she's doing today without that predecessor.
that's right. They were blazing the way.
Exactly.
Man, that's cool. So what's next for you? What are you doing besides
more
this?
of more of women's motorcycle show. I'm working on building another bike finally. So this
Yeah,
will be my third build, technically speaking, and it's a 2001 Kawasaki ZRX 1100. So that is going to be a whole new foray for me into things that I have never dealt with. I always said I'm never going to get a leader bike because I know that I'll just like ride like an a-hole and go too fast everywhere and everything, and then I ended up
yeah.
buying a leader bike. So I don't know why I do this to myself.
Well, the good thing is a lot of those bikes they do have the power, but they're you can ride them real docile or you can ride them
Right.
fast, and it's always nice to have that on tap. Like one of the bikes I ride a lot, it's capable. It's a bagger, but it's capable of doing actually over 150. Do I ride 150 all the time? Hell no. I mean, it's I have to really ring it out to get there. But I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure it was capable in case I needed to be there.
Right. You always
But
want the option.
yeah, but at the same time, I can have it in sixth gear, lugging it down to, I mean, believe it or not, 50, but you don't want to do a hill like that, but it'll actually still run in gear, at 50, probably even less, but you wouldn't want to do it. You know,
Right.
it's like a six
Um,
cylinder.
the first time I ever rode a leader bike, it was a Ducati 999S, and I literally like and short shifted into second, and I was already going 90. I mean, there's
Yeah.
you know every motorcycle has a different personality for sure, and I've heard very good things about the ZRX 1100. So it's gonna be fun either way, and I'm gonna love it. And right now it's a paperweight, so this will be my again motorcycle boot camp into learning how to rewire a complete motorcycle.
That sounds great. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Um, I think I would just love to add, like, please, check out my book, right? It's available pretty much
Okay.
everywhere. You can get it Barnes and Noble, Amazon, order it at your local bookstore. My website is themotolady.com, and Women's Motorcycle Show is womensmotoshow.com. Come check everything out and join the party.
Great. And the name of the book?
The Moto Ladies book of women who ride.
I like that. That sounds like a great book right there. I like that.
Straightforward, tells you what it is, right?
Right on. All right. Well, it was great having you on here. I can't wait to run into you in person, and just don't leave me in the dust if we're riding. Okay. It's kind of embarrassing, you know?
Well, no problem. I would love to go for a ride with you. And thank you, Rusty, for your time today. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Talk to you later.